And we welcome you once again here to In the Circle Live. We get you set for Game 2 of the National Championship Series between Oklahoma and Florida State. Eric Lopez, Victor Anderson. More importantly, our special guest joining us at the top of the show. She's the head coach at CSUN, coming off a year where they got to the postseason. And, of course, when you think of one of the greats of all time in college softball, especially at Alabama, Mount Rushmore, I don't think you could talk Alabama softball without our guest here, Charlotte Morgan, who knows a thing or two about the Women's College World Series, having participated in it. Honored to be joined by you. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be back on here and talk about the game that I love. So thank you again. It's an honor to be here. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to get your analyst hat here in a little moment from your past days, because you did a little work at ESPN a little bit after your playing days. But I want to start off because of where you're at. You're actually in the Chicago area in Rosemont. You're getting ready to help out with AUX for season 2 of that. Kind of tell us a little bit about that and why you want to be you've been involved. It's the second year, I Bleav, you've been involved with it.
Yeah, so, I unfortunately had my pro career cut short after 5 years from injury, and I want to continue to advocate for our sport. Our sport is so unique and has so much positivity around it, but I want to make it work at the pro level so that hopefully at some day my daughter, who's 4, can play professional softball and make a living. And so I'm going to continue to do what I can to advocate for our sport at the highest level. And I'm honored to be up here. I'm a facilitator, so I get to help the captains with their draft. I help with their practices. I throw BP, whatever they need. And it's just so awesome to get to learn from everyone from different programs. We have Megan Faremo up here, and I just had lunch sitting with her, and Sid McClenny from Wichita State. And you see him on TV, and I'm up here, and it's cool as I get to work with them. I get to give them knowledge, some advice, and then learn from them too at the same time. So I'm honored, and I'm honored that my administration at CSUN knows how important it is for me to continue to grow our game, and giving me the opportunity to come up to Chicago and be with AUX for the second season.
Yeah, and I mean, it was tremendous and dramatic last year in year 1, coming down to the final day, too. That was that. And now year 2, you mentioned Sydney McKinney involved, among others there, Megan Faremo. I mean, I really think this really, and it's right after the World Series to try to continue that momentum for people watching the World Series.
Yeah, and what I think's awesome is we're with ESPN. So we've already been bumped to some ESPN2, some ESPNU. So we're on the main stage, and I can tell you that's something that's huge as a professional athlete in softball, is being able to get on the mainstream, the main sports network with ESPN, and the support from ESPN, but just everyone in general, Nike, the gear that these players get, the care that they get. It blows me away to see, and I'm honored that I get to be a small piece of it, but I can sit here and say that these women are being treated like professionals, like they should be. And you get to watch them on ESPN. Like, it's so cool to talk to recruits. They're watching the World Series. I'm like, hey, softball's not going away. We're on it next week, and I think it's unique to keep that excitement, because our game is growing, which you see all over the nation, and to be able to continue to give them something to watch, and to see the pros that they've loved, and people idolize these, student athletes from their collegiate careers, but guess what? They're not done. And I think it's cool that we give them a platform that you can see them. We get to do more in tune. We do a lot of live mics, different things where you get to know these players personally. And if you're an audience that's never seen the game, or someone that's followed it, you get that interaction, which I think is very unique that they do up here at AU.
That'll be getting going there. And, of course, you're fresh off really a great season at CSUN, right near the mix for the conference title all year round, taking big steps here for this program, considering where where it was when you took over it. You've had a little time to kind of reflect on the season. You made it to the postseason tournament there up in Colorado. What do you think of now this past season there? I think your second year now, head coach?
Yeah, so it's my second full year, third season. Yeah. I was fired in the middle of COVID. But, we revamped everything in this program, and from rebuilding the foundation, and it takes time. And we're really lucky that we were able to turn it pretty fast, to do it in 2 years, to be in the contention of the top of our conference. We play in a great conference with the Big West. And, we were able to do some things we haven't done in a long time. We took the series with the champion, Long Beach State. And, that's huge for our girls, for them, our student athletes, to believe that they know they can. But we have rich history and a strong alumni base. And I've told them we're going to get this program back to where they were proud and where they wanted to be a part of it. And I'm honored to be the head coach, but we have administration that believes in us, believe in what we do. And I think when you see that, that's why we were able to have success so fast. When people usually think it takes 3 to 4 years to get going, and then you start getting that success. And we believe in teaching them to be good student athletes, good people in the community, just to be a good person and do it right. We are not going to do anything the short way. We're going to do things right so that it's sustainable. And I think that that's why you can see our foundation academics. They've turned that around tremendously. Just everything that we have done, we've broken down, and I'm proud to be the leader. I'm proud of my coaching staff that works hard, and our student athletes that are understanding the level that we're at, because we expect to be in postseason. And, going to the NISC has been great. I know the experience that I've gotten in that before. Didn't do very well this time, but I hope they felt that. And guess what? We're going to keep building. And now it's, you want to come somewhere, we want you to come and be great softball players, but I want you to want to come to a program to be a great person, and that you're going to get a good education, and we care about you as people. And, I'm really honored and excited. And then I get to be a great mom. My daughter, Boston, gets to come with me. And, I'm in California. So for me, it's the perfect fit. I love where I'm at. I love our team, and really, really excited that they got some of that little taste of what winning tastes like. But they have to learn how to continue to win and continue to know what that work takes. So proud of our team, and it's just the beginning of where we'll go.
A league, too, that I thought had a fantastic year. 2 bids into the NCAA tournament, with Long Beach winning the conference championship, dramatically sweeping Cal State Fullerton. Fullerton getting in as and at large. Your program on the rise. Also, shout out to Jo Evans and the job she did at UCSB and turning around that program. A lot of positives, I think, for the Big West heading into 2024 with a lot of momentum.
Yeah, I think, to send 2 teams is a big, big deal. And that's why, Kelly Ford at Fullerton, her preseason's so tough. Our preseason is really tough. It's about, your RPI, your strength of schedule, and we get to recruit. We have a really great conference, and we're getting coaches that believe in that. And to be able to squeeze, Fullerton to get in, it was huge. I think it was big to then us, and then also UC Davis got into the NIST. So there was 4 teams that got into postseason, and that shows you that our RPI, our strength of schedule, who we're playing, all of that matters if we want to succeed as a conference. And I thought this was the first step, and I'm excited to have Jo Evans in our conference. She's going to do amazing things. She already is. And, this conference is going to keep growing, and there's no reason we're not where we're located. And I'm excited to see where the Big West takes off.
Star-studded coaching league there within the program of the rise, Victor. There, we've talked about it all year on the podcast, Victor.
I mean, it's like a cradle of coaches that are really migrating to your league, and it's fun. It's interesting because you played against some of the coaches, and especially with Coach Evans, and now you're coaching against her. What is that like for you, seeing someone of her stature giving more star power and credibility to a conference that has already cemented itself in college softball?
Well, I can just tell you that I'm just honored to be a part of them. And, being raised in Southern California, but I went off to Alabama, and I never came back and coached in California. And when I came back, because of my daughter, and started back at Fullerton with Ford, she's been the biggest mentor. And what I think is amazing is you have Patty at UCSD. They just want to help and spread their knowledge, and they're not afraid to talk to you. And, And that's what I think is huge is, I'm a younger head coach and I'm a mom, and not many moms survive in our profession. And so to have a mentor like Kelly Ford, and then also now having, Joe Evans and just Bob at Hawaii, people that have been around, and I can listen, but then I come in and I challenge, and I'm not afraid to say, we need this to be better. Or if we want this to league, we want 2 teams, we've got to challenge each other. And, so I like our head coaches meetings. It's really cool. It's an honor. Joe Evans, our paths have crossed pretty crazy throughout our years. My dad's built her deck one year in Texas. So, again, that's why I love our game. That's why it's so unique. It's why I'm here in Chicago. I tell my kids, you never know who you might come across that later in life, they might help you or they'll be there again. And I can tell you that it's so cool to be able to be a sponge, but also challenge. And, they push me like I push them, and they respect me. And that's what's really unique too, because they could look at me as the younger coach that might not know, but man, they respect me more than I could say. And so that's just going to make me better. It's going to make them better. And then in the end, it makes our conference and the game that we love better.
No doubt. And I watched a lot of your team's games this year too on ESPN Plus platforms, and the improvement was drastic. And I could tell he played hard. I mean, that's you. I got a sense, maybe from watching, that you're having fun. That this is fun. I mean, I know the coaching job can be stressful and everything, but it feels like you're having fun. Am I accurate on that?
Yeah, people always joke that I don't smile, but I'm a pitching coach, so I have to be locked in to call pitches. So I get excited. I show that, but I am having fun. I've coached at all levels in the Power 5 to mid majors and professionally. And I love the game so much. Like obviously when I was a student athlete and a professional athlete, but then being on the other side of a coach, it's so different. And I like being able to make differences in people's life. And I hope that I'm able to give my players or anyone that comes in contact with me on the field is the softball, it saved my life and it gave me a home. And I think that a lot of people need that. And it's different for everybody. And so I enjoy it. I'm having a good time. My daughter gets more competitive. She'll get upset if we lose. And I'm like, Mom, you didn't win. And I'm like, no, honey, like sometimes we don't win, And I said, but guess what? We got to learn from it, get up and go on the next day. And the other day we played her tough in a game. She was crying and she's like, right, Mom, I just got to do my best. I got to try again. And I'm like, let's go, and that's the lessons that need to be taught and being role models. And I'm honored and blessed to be able to do it in a game I love.
No doubt about it. We're speaking with Charlotte Morgan, 3-time All-American, 2-time SEC Player of the Year at Alabama, of course, head coach at CSUN. You mentioned your pitching coach. I want to ask you about, obviously, what we saw in Game 1 of the World Champ Series there between Florida State and Oklahoma. The big hot topic, which even has become national stories, like Pardon the Interruption has discussed it today, as well as Around the Horn, and that is the fact that Florida State chose not to pitch Catherine Sandercock in Game 1. What was your reaction to that as somebody who's involved, and just your overall thoughts in Game 1?
Well, I think that what a lot of people is there's a lot of discussion behind scenes, and coaches make discussions that they think is going to set the team up for success. And outside, we won't understand it. And I think unless we were in that coaching room with Lonnie and we knew exactly why, we will never know unless she opens it up. And I try to tell people is the coaches, they're not there to lose. They're not there to try to set them up for failure. And so do I agree with it? On paper, probably not. I probably would have went with my ace. It's a big show. She's been there, that it doesn't matter if you've played games in the World Series, but once you get to that championship, it's totally different. And so the packed house, it's 2 teams standing. That's different. That's a different mentality, and that's a different pressure. And to see and to know that OU, they feed off a different purpose. And they talk about that. They talk about playing for their king and who they eyes up. They're always looking. So when a team or a person plays with a different purpose, you're going to have to find a way to play for your purpose and not let it affect you. And I think what you see is OU's going to keep fighting. They're not going to back down. They might be their backs against the wall, but when they believe that it's not the result is where their joy comes from, that they're going to keep fighting. And I would say is they have the strongest line of defense. And I think we've seen that from everything. They talk about the pressures, they talk about the anxiousness and everything that they've had. But I believe you got to put your best out there. You got to put your ace, put your best game. You want to get upset that they, walk and throw their bat down and get all excited. But aren't we all trying to celebrate the little things, And what I think is cool is I would be saying, oh, what, that walk didn't mean as much as the other walk. But they don't do that. They celebrate everything like it matters. And I can tell you, being a head coach, that's what we try to get our players to do. Like an 0-2 and they come back and they get a walk. What if that's huge. Like, that's a big deal. But this day and age, a home run's a big deal. They want the big reward. But no one is willing to do those little things to get to that. And what you see OU doing is they're celebrating those little things. They make an error, they take their breath, they want the ball again, they lock right back in. And that's what I think is so unique about them. And I thought in game one, you saw it, they're going back, but you could just tell OU's in a good place. I think that, like I said, they play for a different purpose. So I'd go out with more of a veteran in the circle. I think that they'd be able to handle it and be able to silence the noise, because the noise was really loud. It always is in the championship. Every time the games get in, it gets to the next.
What can Florida State do to beat Oklahoma here tonight and maybe have to win 2 in a row? I mean, Ryan Chandler, when our chat room brings it up, what does it take to beat OU?
To play your game. And you have to play literally like it's just you in the stadium. And it's really hard. I'd say the elite figure it out. And Florida State has done it. They have 11 that have been to the World Series. They have so many people that have been there, and they have to rely on what they've done, who they are. And I think if they get that solid performance in the circle, I think their defense settles down. Their defense is phenomenal. You've seen them make the couple errors that they had, or the bobbles, tells me their heart rates were up. They weren't able to slow down and kind of enjoy that moment. And so I think if they just get back to what Florida State's a well-rounded team. They can hit, they have speed, and they can pitch. And so they just got to get back to themselves, weather the storm, knowing that you're going to give up runs, but you can score runs. They can score runs very easily. So I think Florida State just needs to get back to their game. They play with an electric energy when they're going. And Florida State is the same as OU. If you've watched them, when they're together, to me, Florida State's like no one's coming through. And so I think that if they just focus on themselves, lock in with each other, not worry about what OU's doing, not worrying about the hype and not letting it upset or excite them, if that makes sense. You got to find a way. Like, I loved when people would talk to me. Like, I love when people would heckle me, or fans or other teams. I used it. A lot of people can't. So I think it's knowing who can, who can't, that leader saying, we're in this till the end. There is we got to fight today to get to tomorrow. And if they don't, then they're done. So you got to be able to stay in the moment, to lock in. And I talked to my team about learning from failure. It's the first attempt in learning. So Florida State has to learn fast and pitch to pitch, and be able to slow those moments down. But I think getting back to who they are, they're a very good team, a little uncharacteristic yesterday, but I think it starts in the circle for them.
And on that point, Coach, how important will it be for Florida State to avoid going down early, because Oklahoma's going to be swinging first as a visiting team and you don't want to give that crowd who's already going to be juiced up with the Sooners taking game one. If Oklahoma gets 2 or 3 runs early on Sandercock, that place is going to be smelling a national championship. So how important will it be for Kat Sandercock to keep Oklahoma off the scoreboard early on in game 2 tonight?
I think keeping her pitch count low is going to be big. I think the less that she shows them, the better. There's a reason she didn't start. There's a reason that they're trying to they want to win this. And so I think her keeping her pitch count low, keeping it, showing them as less as she can. OU, they'll swing. They've shown it. They're patient, but they're also aggressive. And she has really good stuff. So I think she stays in her zone. And what's crazy is the place can go electric, but as a player, it's silent. And that's what I think is really unique is it can go crazy. She's been there. She's a veteran. I think she will be able to silence the crowd. And I think you saw her in the dugout yesterday talking to her pitching. Lonnie's talked about her really helping the younger pitchers, and you saw that. So she wasn't afraid of the moment. She wasn't upset in their sulking. And that right there shows me that she's all in for her team. And so I think she's going to come out, keep her pitch count low, do what she does best. And hey, they score 2. So what? We got to score anyway, and having that kind of leadership, I think, can silence that noise and get their energy and focus back into who they are and not who OU is.
Quick questions before we let you go, because I know you got the plans tonight there. Overall thoughts on the Women's College World Series in this postseason? We've seen some interesting storylines. Montana Fouts, I'm sure you follow that storyline very closely. What she dealt with injury-wise and getting to the World Series with Alabama. Obviously, you got Stanford and a rising star in the circle, and the young freshman phenom in Kennedy. Give me your thoughts on the World Series in this postseason 2023.
I think it was a little different because UCLA and then also Florida, there are some big teams that we're used to seeing in the World Series. And, I thought it was awesome to see Tennessee come through. They, won the SEC, came in, thought overall it was good competition. I was excited to see it. Like I said, it felt a little different not having UCLA, but man, Utah made a great run. I think having to play doubleheader was rough because Mariah Lopez threw a lot for them. So that was a little tough for them. But, I love seeing that Stanford come through with how young they are in the circle. And our game's kind of gone away from more of a pitcher's duel where pitchers can get them to the World Series. If you've noticed, there's not been as many Kat Ostermans or Monica Abbotts. You got to have some offense, and Stanford's defense and offense has been huge, but they have 2 really good arms. And I think that they complement each other. One's completely down, one's up. And I hope that if anyone enjoys our game, watched, because they got to see really good pitching, really veterans to someone that had to work through an injury. Montana Fouts, she works her butt off in the off season and gets hurt her last couple months. And she could have went a different way than what she did. And I hope that it shows just young recruits and players and just parents that it's not easy. It's really hard to do our game and to do our game at a high level. And I thought the World Series did a great job with their stories, but also highlighting the tough parts of our game, but also how amazing these women are. These are student athletes that Stanford still had to go back and take finals. They're playing for the World Series and they have finals next week at one of the toughest institutions in the nation, but look at what they're doing. They did it. And I think it shows how strong student athletes and how strong women are. And I think it's so unique to see. And it was great to see, Utah get there, and Oklahoma State had a great run, and they had a hiccup too, didn't play very well. You could have counted them out, and they got there. So I think it's big as I like seeing as a head coach is things we try to preach. Hey, it's not just one game that defines you. It's not one pitch. You can do it. We can still get there. You saw that. I think Oklahoma State was like 2-11. And look, they turned it on when they needed to. They peaked at the right time. And so I think seeing all those different type of stories and seeing OU and their passion and really they're starting to talk about their purpose and on a national level. And I think it's really neat to see, but it's been exciting. I think we've had great softball. Like I said, it was a little different. I'm not going to not talk about that elephant in the room that everyone would be like, oh, you didn't. Yeah, it was weird. It was different to not have UCLA, but you know what? That's what's the beauty of our game. JMU made a run. Anybody can make a run in our game if you believe you can as a team. And I thought you saw some really strong, unified programs that had some hardships that they've gone over, and they were able to sustain it. And I think that that's really cool. And people forget OU was so good, but Baylor beat them. They lost early. And
Yeah.
I don't think having the X on their back is tough. That's a lot of pressure, and people expect them to win. And so I think it's unique. I'm excited for our game. We have so much young talent, and we've had really good leadership in our veterans. A lot of the fifth-year seniors and seniors. So our game is growing, and that's what's really cool. And I'm excited to see where it goes. But it's been great. I've enjoyed it. I wish there's a little bit more game threes just because I love softball. Like the World Series or the Supers, there's only like 2 games on Sunday. I was like, dang it. Like I want more.
I know. Yeah.
Selfish, I just wanted to watch more softball.
No, we want more drama, more dramatic, and maybe we will get it. Who knows? With Sandercock, maybe we'll get it if there's game 3. But you're right. There's a lot of young talent out there that's been showcased, and a lot of young coaches too on the showcase. You're one of them. You had a heck of a year, and certainly as I've texted you there. Congrats on the great season you had in building that program up. Have fun up there at AUX. We'll be following you there, and we'll try to get you back on the show there. I still miss the analyst hat you wear. I used to wear that, but I'm selfish. I'm broadcasting bias.
I know. I miss it too. But yeah, anything I can do, please let me know. And thank you guys for everything you do.
We'll do. Have a good time over there. Thanks for coming on and talking to us.
Of course. Thank you.
No problem. That is Charlotte Morgan, head coach at CSUN, 3-time All-American at Alabama. That's a good way to start a show, right?
That's a beautiful way to start a show. And it gets better, ladies and gentlemen, because coming up just a few moments, someone who was actually at Oklahoma City, our good friend from Bleav in softball, Jenna Becerra, will join us to give her thoughts on game 2 and what she got to see at Oklahoma City, and with her Stanford Cardinal making it back to the Women's College World Series for the first time since 2005. And plus, we'll give our thoughts on game 2 and what might be happening. A couple of notes, Eric, I do want to bring up in terms of game number 1. With Oklahoma, how they were able to get things going. Again, Kenzie Hansen in the middle of everything. And the interesting part about this with Oklahoma, the Florida State Immaculate, give her credit. She did her job for the first 3 innings. But again, it was that you get Oklahoma on base, and that's how they get things.
Well, I haven't
going.
heard your thoughts. Obviously, we're on late in the post-game show because it went late. So
a little late, yeah, a little late.
Let's just say you got knocked out.
Yeah.
We had Kenzie Fowler, though. But it's been a hot topic since the game ended. And I mentioned it to Charlotte. Michael Wilbon went in on FSU on PTI. I was really caught off guard with that. Critical of them not throwing Cantor and Sandercock at any point in the game. We had Kenzie Fowler on the show. You could watch that on our archives. That'll be on our podcasts moving forward down the road. We're going to have a lot of these interviews will be on the podcast coming up down the road here.
Yeah. We actually had Kenzie on our latest episode that came out earlier this
There you go. There you go. I was dealing with some wacky UCF baseball stuff that so I did not see that. But that's all their story. Your thoughts on Sandercock not pitching? Because that has been a topic. Fowler thought, Kenzie thought she didn't have as big of a problem with her not starting. She was surprised that she didn't come in relief from McKenna Reed. We haven't seen the lineups yet, but I expect Sandercock to get the ball today. But again, you and I have talked about it. I'm old school, man. I go with your best. But
the thing with Coach Lonnie Alameda, and she said this in her post-game press conference after game 1, they obviously had a plan in place. And look, for 3 innings, Mac Leonard was doing her job versus Oklahoma. She was doing what she needed to do. So the plan was working. It was only one until that fourth inning when Hansen got that double, and that's when the snowball started rolling. That's when things got a little bit out of control. The biggest thing, Eric, is that you wouldn't see Sandercock unless Florida State had a lead. I personally feel.
Right.
So,
I agree with that. I think that was the plan the whole time. I don't think she was, and we'll see what happens. Look, obviously they're going to try to win game 2 tonight, but then they're going to have to throw her again game 3. We'll see how it goes. But they're going to have to find some offense.
But the interesting thing, Eric, the two meetings that Florida State has had with Oklahoma, game 1 last down, and then a meeting in March, Sandercock did not pitch in either of those games. But remember, Oklahoma saw Sandercock during game 1 and during the championship series 2 years ago.
Right.
So they have a book on her already. And of course, the various video study that they do has given them an ability and an understanding to know what she is capable of in the circle. But who will Oklahoma go in the circle with? Bradley, to answer your question, Jordy Ball was in the flex position. So by rule, the flex player can pinch hit or pinch run for anybody within the batting order 1 through 9, and then that player can re-enter, quote unquote, back in the game. That's the reason Ball pinch ran for Haley Lee, because Ball was in the flex position.
There you go, Bradley. That's the Mike Pereira of softball, Victor Anderson.
I don't know about all.
That's who I go to. I go to you every time I have a question. I go to you for rules there. Let's bring in now a person to kind of continue this conversation there.
Hey, with the proper promotion and everything. Look at
she understands how this works.
Yeah,
in this industry. She's just back from Oklahoma City, where she was there covering obviously the World Series, as well as being an alum for her Stanford Cardinal. The host of the Bleav in Softball podcast, of course, Pac-12 Network analyst. We had Kenzie Fowler on our post-game show after Game 1. Only fitting we bring in Jenna Becerra here to talk a little World Series. How you doing?
I'm good. I mean, I am exhausted in the best way, and I'm still kind of wired, right? Because we still, like, the World Series isn't over yet. So I'm all over the place, but in a good way.
And by the way, now you could say you followed Charlotte Morgan in the batting order here in guest list. It's the show.
See, that's a life goal. Check that off the list right there.
Well, let me ask, because you've heard the conversation, and like I said, it's been a national topic. People that don't cover softball talked about it. Catherine Sandercock not pitching at all, not starting, and then not coming in relief in the game. Kind of similar to what Tennessee did against Oklahoma on that Saturday, where they didn't pitch Ashley Rogers. Your reaction to this?
I understand having a plan and sticking to it. Like, I can respect that general concept, but at this point in the season, what are you saving anyone for? You know, like, I understand earlier in the season, we've seen other teams do that. You know, a lot of people talked about how Nigeri Kennedy for Stanford, you know, was out a little bit during the Pac-12 regular season and didn't even finish that game in the Pac-12 semifinals for the tournament against UCLA, but it was for the World Series, in which they no longer saved her, right? So understanding why someone like Ashley Rogers and someone like Kat Sandercock wouldn't have the ball in these big situations, I struggle, right? Like, we don't have maybe all the data and all the research and the scouting reports that some of these coaching staffs have, but from the outside looking in, it's a little tough to wrap my mind around.
Me too. I mean, I talked to Kenzie Fowler about it. Now, Fowler defended the decision not to start her, but she would have brought her in for McKenna Reed. But this is a new age softball I'm never going to feel comfortable. Like, you know, and it just wouldn't be wild. Like with Stanford on Monday, you knew that Vaughter and Kennedy both were going to pitch.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of wild to me. At least with Rogers, Tennessee, she's had injury history. So I think that played a role there a little bit.
Yeah.
Sandercock has always been healthy. But this is kind of the new age now, advanced analytics and stuff. And like I said, the series is not over. They could have the last laugh if they win the next 2. But either way, Sandercock's going to have to pitch, in my opinion, the next 2 games for them to have a shot here.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this matchup here now, 1 game in?
I mean, I think it's interesting because what I saw actually from Florida State is some of the things that they're best at, they actually were a little bit messy in terms of, like, the defense is super crisp. Usually that's one of the things I like about watching them play and just their style of play. And there were some mistakes and some miscues in that situation. And with some of the closest games that we have seen teams play against Oklahoma, which there aren't that many, but for the ones that we have seen, it has somewhat turned into who's going to make a mistake first. And the other team tends to do that. Like with Stanford, happened in both of the games, right? That they actually had against OU. I mean, it was an error in the outfield, and then all of a sudden, things change in game one, right? And we're seeing that, I think, a little bit with Florida State. Now, you have to score to win anyway. So have to give all the credit in the world to Jordy Ball for what she has done in this tournament. For me, even leading up to this, obviously pending what happens here at the end, she is the leader for most outstanding player of this tournament, in my opinion. So I think you have to give all the credit in the world to that. But I think if Florida State really brings their best, like put Sandercock in the circle, like let's tighten up those things that maybe we felt a little nervous about yesterday. If they can settle down, we could see a game 3. We could. Like, we have seen that Oklahoma is human, barely, but they are.
I agree. And, they'll have Sandercock, I would assume, tonight. Oklahoma, we don't know who they're going to go with. We think it'll be probably a Nicole May. But do they go back to Jordy Ball? We don't know. We'll see. The lineup should be coming out here momentarily, in fact. You got to see Oklahoma up close, in person, twice. Maybe more. I think you saw them for the Tennessee. I don't know if were you there for the Tennessee game? Okay, so you were there 3 times. So give me your thoughts on him, seeing him live in person. It's one thing to see him on TV, but you got to see him up close in person. What's your thoughts on the Sooners?
I mean, they love softball, and I know there's a huge conversation right now, especially on social media, about their celebrations and things like that. But the thing that actually has stuck out to me, especially in the post-game press conferences that I was able to attend and have listened into since being back, the theme that sticks out a lot is that them talking about not being results oriented. It's something that I think is easy to say, but not that easy to execute. And I feel like they're able to do that. And a great example of that is Tiare Jennings on her birthday coming through with the 0-2 hit to right center field against Stanford, right? It's like if you're not hung up on results, that means you're not affected negatively or too positively, right? By previous at-bats. She had been struggling. She struck out a couple times. We could talk all day long about the pitch call and execution and all that stuff, but like she still was able to execute because of that mentality. And that's just one example. The chucking the bats into the ground thing, for me, it's not the celebration. Like, I have no issue with the emotion, but I was kind of brought up in the sport to like respect your equipment. So I think that's the part where I'm like, oof, are we chucking bats into the ground? Like, that's your equipment. You want to take good care of it. Well, that's actually where my mind goes.
This came up a few years ago when Samantha Schau, remember, hit the bat flip in the home run of the World Series, and that created a stir. As well. So that's just the new age of softball now.
I ask everyone who comes on the show. I asked you when you came on the show, Eric, too, like, safer out. I'm wearing the safer out shirt right now, actually, at the end of every.
Look at you with the merchandise here.
I know. I'm merched out. And I have plenty of World Series merch too. But yeah, I ask everybody about, bat flips. What are your thoughts? But I think there's a bat flip and there's like a tomahawk, right? Like there's a spectrum here. So it's just kind of figuring out.
Well, and it's created conversation. They were asked about it in the media in availability. I thought Grace Lyons had a great answer in that, look, everybody has different personalities. We do it to celebrate ourselves. We're not doing it to show up anybody. It's a fascinating topic that I think will not go away anytime soon in the sport of softball. What was your overall take of the event itself? Because this was the first time you've been there. What's your takeaways having spent a week there, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I had played there. I talked a lot with some of my old teammates. A lot of alums, like 25 or so Stanford alums, came out to Oklahoma City at some point during the World Series. So that was really fun as a reunion. I think Coach Alster even said, she's like, I know this is going to sound weird, but I kind of have FOMO with all of you guys in the stands because, she's an alum too. And so is Tori Nyberg. So obviously they were focused on taking care of business, but it was really fun. I think as an alum of a program that was competing, I was very proud to be there. I think as a member of the media, I think I was really impressed. The atmosphere is fantastic. We were all talking about how, man, the last time we were here was when we played for travel ball for nationals, when 18 gold days, we played on that field, but to be there for Stanford this time was very exciting. But from the media side of things, I think to see all of these teams up close and personal was really fun. And just to see what they do when the pressure, like, this is the most important time. This is when the pressure's on. And that's why I always have these thoughts like, should we be naming All-Americans before the World Series? Because this is really the biggest stage. Shouldn't we see that play out, right? But I understand the marketing tactics behind doing it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I went off because Kennedy wasn't an All-American because she didn't reach the innings limit. I think she missed it by an inning, if I'm not mistaken. Well, that looks foolish now, doesn't it? Looks kind of foolish.
Yeah. It's tough, and everyone's going nuts because how could you be the National Freshman of the Year and not? But yes, that was the context, is that it had to be in the regular season specifically. By the time the World Series rolled around, she had surpassed that 100 inning mark, but during the regular season, she had not. So that's where it landed.
Which is crazy to me, because I don't care what they say. The postseason influences some of their picks, I'm sure, because the votes come out. They get together, I think, right before the World Series and finalize the All-American stuff. So I think that was kind of nuts. Maybe that gets tweaked down the road. That's a good segue, though, because, boy, everybody knows who Kennedy is now. I said this. I think the takeaway from this World Series is she's the face of the sport now moving forward. I thought going into the year that was one of the big questions in softball is who is the new face, with Jocelyn Allo moving on, and stuff. Who is the face of the sport? It is her. People love watching her pitch. It was interesting to see the social media react to her. The fact that she showed no fear against Oklahoma, the fact that she made Oklahoma look, Oklahoma hitters did not want any part of her at times, overpowered them, which you don't see. What you've seen it. You were not surprised. You've seen it up close. But what's now your reaction to the fact that a lot of people are jumping on this bandwagon?
And it is a bandwagon, right? Because for those that have been following the team and her specifically throughout the year, this isn't a surprise. And Coach Alistair really said it best, where she was like, it's kind of nice that the rest of the world was catching on to what we knew from the start. And she was talking about her specifically. And, she talked about in the post game how that was her first phone call, September 1st, when they were allowed to start that up for recruiting. It was Nyjah. And she told her, I think you're the best pitcher in the country. And she also has given high praise to Tori Nyberg, which is well-deserved when you look at the duo that is Nyjah Kennedy and Elena Vodder, and even the age difference too. You have that in the senior leadership. You have it in the freshmen with the new energy as well. To me, I knew. I saw her in the fall, and I think Kylie Chung mentioned this in a post-game presser too, where she's like, well, we all hit against her in the fall. So we knew how good she was because we weren't really hitting against her very much. And I saw that a little bit. So not surprised. I think, though, in terms of visibility, it's huge. And no doubt that kind of visibility going to the World Series in the first place, as well as her as an individual, will help from a recruiting perspective, too. And that's what we've seen happen for some of these other programs with the growth of the sport. But, getting some of that visibility in that ESPN level TV is what some programs and conferences like the SEC, the ACC get all season long. So I think it shows that once you have folks from other conferences get that same exposure, you can really see that coast to coast talent front and center.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated when they do the TV schedule next year, how often we're going to see Stanford all of a sudden on that schedule, Jenna, because you can make the argument for the first time in a long time, maybe since Mendoza played at Stanford, that next year people are looking forward to not UCLA or Arizona, but looking forward to seeing Stanford out of the Pac-12. I think and it speaks to the job that Jessica Alistair has done. She mentioned, maybe accidentally or not, I don't know, in the presser that Stanford's getting $50 million renovations, which is incredible. Big news there. Stanford, I don't know if you're aware of this, Stanford, Washington on ABC drew 1.3 million viewers on ABC, which is a monster number. Their game against Alabama drew 1.1 million. A lot of eyeballs on the Stanford program and a product here for Jessica Alistair, and a magical week for them.
Absolutely. And it's something that she said this too, when she first took the job and came back to Stanford, her goal was, Stanford should be competing for championships. And I think she was right in saying that the semifinal game between Stanford and Oklahoma, and even that first game, really felt like a championship level game, like a championship series level game. But with her, it's been slow but steady. And I think she just does not get distracted by anything on the outside. And that's what's made the difference. When she took over the team, the first season in 2018, they didn't do that much better than 2017, but they felt better. And then it's all of a sudden they go to postseason, and then they get to the regional final. Then they win regionals last year, and they move on and even host supers. And then this year it's that national seed and that Women's College World Series appearance. And it's with 0 transfers. That actually has started to get more attention as well, I think, in this postseason when you take a look at the different rosters of the teams that made it. And I think that's a huge point in terms of coaching, because that's development. There's a management aspect by utilizing the portal, et cetera. I mean, that is what the game is now. It is what it is. But with Stanford and the academic standards that they have, they can't really play. They can't really be in that playground very much. So they have to focus on developing the talent that they have. That is something she talked about a lot in our preseason conversation on Bleav in Softball as well. And it has clearly shown to be true.
No doubt. To me, she's the national coach of the year. I know they don't have that award, but Extra Innings Softball actually does, and I would vote for her if I had a vote. I don't, but I think she's done an incredible job. I'm a little jealous, and I've said this to you in the past, because you've had the one guest I haven't had on your podcast that I've tried to get, and that's Ramona Shelburne, who does NBA. And I don't know, hopefully Jessica Allister didn't get sick and tired, because I asked her all about Ramona throughout the week because I was obsessed with it. But she made the trip. She got to go, which was kind of cool. I was really, to me, it's one of my favorite moments, because I love the whole storyline with Jessica Allister and Mendoza, and so where they were teammates. Ramona and Jessica were outspoken in the support of Jessica when she was hired. I've spoken to Jessica about it numerous times about it. I've never talked to Ramona about it. I'm a huge fan, because she and I have similar paths in that we both cover the NBA and softball. Of course, she's going back and forth between the finals and softball, which is remarkable. What was it like to see her in attendance? Because you got to hang out with her. Mendoza, you posted that photo on your Twitter, and all the other alums.
It was incredible. Last year, I remember Mendoza being like, hey, because I still work with Stanford and with the Pac-12, I tend to be the closest to the team in terms of the alumni base, for example. So with that being said, I tend to do some of the organizing and things like that, and the communication between the alumni base. And Mendoza was so excited about it last year when they host supers for the first time and all of that stuff. But getting to be on the biggest stage and getting to have this reunion at the Women's College World Series was so, so exciting and just fun. I think everyone was so proud. We wish that we would have done it more often, not just at the World Series, but not a bad place to be. And the fact that the alums made that extra effort. I mean, Ramona flying from the NBA Finals and catching a foul ball, by the way, like one of the first pitches of the game, it was Taylor Gindelsberger. She signed that ball for Ramona too, eventually. So she has that to keep. And then, we went to dinner with her. We hung out with Jess Mendoza as a group too, and just all caught up with different generations of Stanford softball alumni as well. And I think that's actually one of the best parts. And that's what you talk about when you commit anywhere, like any athlete, about having that, like, it's not a 4-year decision, it's a lifetime decision. We got to really feel that again, front and center when we were in Oklahoma City. And Ramona's fantastic. She went back to the NBA Finals after being in Oklahoma City. But just to see her put in that effort, it's like, wow, it inspires everyone else to do the same thing.
Yeah, she made headlines because she asked her question. Eric Spoelstra went viral, which was kind of wild to see that as well. And Jessica Allister, you know her better than anybody. I had to believe there's some pride there with her that maybe she didn't show publicly, but privately shows there with that pride too, I would imagine.
100%. I mean, absolutely. And it's very cool too, because of the sort of relationships within the alumni base. In my case, having played for Coach Allister when she was an assistant coach my freshman year, Ramona Shelburne's from not far from me in Southern California. She actually covered me when I was in high school playing at Westlake High School, and she worked at the Daily News pre-ESPN. Mendoza's from the same hometown as me. She's from Camarillo, and that's where we both were like born and raised, right? So having those kind of personal connections and then seeing them play out and seeing all of my other teammates who also played for Coach Allister, were recruited by Coach Allister, like we all just, the pride was through the roof. And that goes for Tori Nyberg as well. There was an actual Tori Nyberg fan club within the Stanford bubble. I'm not sure if that made it on TV, but it was definitely there.
Didn't see that part on the TV that I could tell, but you guys were out in support. It was great atmosphere you all brought. You were there also for Montana Fouts' last game when Stanford eliminated Alabama for another second year in a row. Yep. What was your takeaway there for Fouts pitching away? That was a great matchup with her and Vaughter, but Vaughter gets the best of her for the second year in a row.
I mean, an outstanding game, right? See, I enjoy, like, I like seeing all the offense and all of that we now have in this game, but that was a bit of an old school game, right? Where it's the 1-0 game at the end of the day. That's what we're used to seeing with the pitchers duels. And to see two All-American pitchers in the circle with Elena Votter and Montana Fouts, both with that senior leadership, that experience, of course, the storyline from last year as well. I mean, credit to Elena Votter for seeming to just have success against Alabama, but also tons of credit to Montana Fouts for what she's done for the sport. I mean, the visibility that she, as an individual, as well as, her conference, the SEC, Alabama as a program, et cetera, have brought to this game, and that she'll continue to do. I'm sure internationally, hopefully professionally, we'll get to see her continue her career. It's been huge. And so I think what a moment, for that to happen. What a place for it to happen.
Tremendous moment there. We're speaking with Jenna Becerra here on In the Circle Live. We're about 9 minutes away from first pitch. It is out now. Catherine Sandercock will start for Florida State. No surprise there. Alex Storako starting for Oklahoma. That one surprises me a little bit, Jenna. I thought Nicole May would get the ball. She started against Stanford, gave up a home run, but I thought threw very well. Your reaction to the pitching matchup?
Obviously not surprised about Sandercock. Expected. I would have been surprised if it wasn't, I think, as most people would have been. And I tend to agree with what you said, Kenzie mentioned, which is it's fine if you don't start her in game one, but I definitely thought she was going to come in. So to see her getting the ball, we're all thrilled, I think, about that. On the Oklahoma side, I mean, as a staff, they've led the nation all year in ERA, right? So it's not just Jordy Ball. She's certainly the ace, but they have so many options in the circle as well. And I think for me, I'm pretty certain that, Storako will get the start, but Ball's going to be ready to go in. I think that was the game plan that they talked about afterwards against Stanford, second time seeing him, right? The second time they're seeing Florida State in this tournament was, okay, we'll start one pitcher, but we'll have Jordy be ready like mid-game and hot and ready to go in the circle. And I think they're probably going to take a similar approach, and Jordy almost gets to be the closer in that situation too. But Storako's been fantastic all year long. Like it's almost like you have so many options. We've seen her the least in the World Series as well. So that means, like, in terms of recent scouting, Florida State's also seen her the least and where she's at right now. So I think it's interesting, and I'm excited to see the matchup.
What does Florida State have to do tonight to force a game 3?
They have to execute. I think they have to play their own game, because it did seem, at least to me, that it got a little bit big for them yesterday. I mean, I think all the credit to Mac Leonard for what she did in the first few innings. Like, got to give her credit for that. But after that, like I said, some of the defense getting a little sloppy when they're normally very crisp. Just play to your own strengths, and I think that comes with execution, but they have to get the timely hit. That's anyone in this situation. Like, it just has to be the timely hit, because they did have their opportunities. They had runners on base and they just didn't come through. So it's just having that timely hit on top of just clean softball. And I think that's what Oklahoma does so well, right? That's how they win so many games. That's what Florida State's going to have to do if they want a game 3.
Yeah, I think back to that Mac Leonard at bat, game 1, their second and third has that ball down the line and right goes foul. Maybe if that goes fair, we have a different game. Maybe we do see Sandercock at that point with the lead. That's what Lonnie kind of alluded to in her post game, that they had the lead. Maybe they throw her, but they didn't. There. I think it's key for Florida State to get off to a good start. Don't want to fall behind. Oklahoma is a great team, because you're right. I agree with you. I think if Oklahoma has the lead, you're going to see Jordy Ball to try to close this out. And I think Nicole May will also be available in relief too, whereas Florida State used a lot of the relievers in game 1. So now you're putting all the pressures on Sandercock to carry this game. Again, it's fascinating, the process and this decision making.
It certainly is. And I think a lot of these coaches and even the players throughout the tournament have talked about, though, how pressure is a privilege and they want the ball in those situations. So I guarantee that Kat Sandercock is ready and thrilled to be in this position right now. But it's interesting, because now Oklahoma has pretty much seen the rest of the pitching staff for the most part. And, it's going to be a little more pressure, but that's what they like. I mean, Jordy Ball talked about that too. She almost doesn't want necessarily runners to get on base, but she kind of thrives in those moments. And I think the best pitchers do.
Your gut feeling, we're having a game 3 on Friday or no? Because I'm assuming this, whatever happens, will impact your podcast recording, no? Or does it? Because I remember last year it did. So that's why I wanted to get you on the pregame, because I know postgame could be a little hectic for you.
Yes, it would affect it. It would definitely affect it. So I'm, I got my head on a swivel over here, but I think, and I thought before going in yesterday that OU would take it in 2 games. I would like to be proven wrong, because I think if Florida State does play their game and up to if they actually realize the potential that they've shown, and even just like the actual success that they've had this season, they can certainly win this ball game tonight and take it to game 3. But based on what we saw yesterday, it does seem like Oklahoma will probably win that national championship tonight. But Florida State fans, don't come at me, because I still think it's possible. I'm not saying it's not.
Well, I would argue you've got the pitching edge going in.
Yeah.
But Sandercock has to be magnificent, and offensively, they got to put pressure.
It's the offense too. Yeah. I mean, Jordy Ball has scored more runs than she's given up this tournament, because she scored as a pinch runner yesterday and hasn't given up a single run.
The good news for Sandercock, we had Jen Sewell on prior to game 1. She said that Stanford, she felt, gave the blueprint how to pitch to Oklahoma. Can Sandercock do similar things than what Vaughter and Kennedy did? Sandercock doesn't throw as hard as a Kennedy. Obviously, there are different styles, but location is a big factor that I think is underrated about Kennedy. Everybody talks about how hard she throws, but what they don't talk about is their placement of the ball and their movement that comes with that.
Certainly. I mean, that's what does it, right? Velocity helps, but you have to be able to change speeds. In addition to that, you have to be able to change planes, but it's really the precision of the location. Anytime that's off, that's when you see things over the wide of the plate, and these hitters are way too good. They're going to capitalize. And we see that time and time again whenever that does happen. So Sandercock has her work cut out for her, but she's also one of the best positioned people to potentially do it. So we'll see.
All right, tell the audience about your podcast, because I know it's pending this. You're like me, it's pending the result of these games will impact it. I know you just had Karen Johns, which that was a 3. I'm not surprised one bit that it was a 2-parter, because I had Karen Johns earlier in the year, and she has a lot of thoughts and a lot of great stories. So that I would have been surprised if you kept her to 1 part. But tell us about the podcast and what you got. I know you can't give away too much, because the result will dictate some of that. But what can people expect here in the podcast?
Yeah, first 2-parter this season, actually, which is certainly well worth it, because yes, to your point, she also recruited me when she was the head coach at Virginia. So we got to just kind of have that sort of catch up as well. Talking about my official visit, all that stuff in part 1. So part 2 is coming out this week, tomorrow-ish. Like I will, again, pending the results, we'll have to see what happens there. But then, going to continue throughout the summer too. Obviously, going to be covering AUX, Athletes Unlimited championship season, as well as the WPF too, which is exciting. So you can find it at Bleav in Softball on YouTube, any podcast platforms, the audio platforms you usually get your podcasts at, and you can follow at Bleav in Softball on Instagram and Twitter, and that's BLEAV with Bleav Network.
Yes, in fact, Victor reminded me because he had to go to work. But we want to get you involved, because me and Vic have been doing this draft every week during AU season, where we draft players. And I think we do it for either the whole season or just weekly. We changed it up. Sometimes we've done it weekly. Sometimes one year we did it weekly. One year we did it the whole year. We might have to include you in this draft, so you can pick players, and it'd be a battle of podcast shows there.
I love it. And we're going to see some of the, college stars, like Faramo's playing with athletes. It's going to be fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
McKinney's going to be in there. So it'll be a lot of fun. That's going to be coming up shortly. But all right, time for the Champ Series. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck. I know it's going to be an interesting night or two, depending what happens here. I know that very well. So good luck with that. But hey, thanks for coming on and talking to us. We always love having you on, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm sure we'll talk more this summer too. But let's watch that game.
Should be great. Jenna Becerra joining us here on In the Circle Live, and that will wrap it up for this portion of the show. But join us after Game 2 tonight for the Champ Series postgame. Will we be talking about a national championship for Oklahoma, or will we be talking about Game 3? We'll be scheduled to be joined by Arizona State head coach Megan Bartlett. Thanks to Jenna Becerra. Thanks to Charlotte Morgan. For Victor Anderson, I'm Eric Lopez. We'll catch you on the post-game show right on the same YouTube channel you've been watching In the Circle.